Hi, I'm Tom Spencer. This week on Central Texas Gardener, bring on the butterflies with Bill Neiman from Native American Seed. He serves up the seeds to plant this fall for habitat restoration. On tour in Temple, get a couple's new perspective in their makeover to welcome wildlife. Daphne makes her pick of the week, and Trisha has your backyard basic tips. So let's get growing right here, right now.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.
When you move into deer country, how do you change your ways? See how this couple did it in Temple.
In Temple, Texas, Mary Lew and David Quesinberry wanted a garden, not a lawn. They didn't want see it all at once flat dimension either.
We moved here in 1998. It was a long, flat, narrow lot with cedar elms and probably about 3 live oaks.
This wasn't their first garden. But when they fell in love with this property, they realized the plants they'd grown in Belton weren't going to work.
We moved here and we saw these beautiful deer peeking out from the woods. And they had just had these huge racks and we were so excited. And we had a herd of 27 deer when we moved here.
Rather than fence out the deer, they went for plants that usually are safe from nibbling.
We hate fences. So we wanted a living fence or a screen, and so that's what we did all around the property, was just to, we'd have little seedlings come up of yopons and we'd just plant them.
Orchid trees come up periodically and we just dig them up and plant them in various places.
Rather than be mad at the deer, we wanted the deer to be welcome in the garden.
In back, the dimensional view for watching wildlife of all kinds starts near the house. Its panorama entrance from the patio or indoors refreshes, even when it's hot. Seasonal changes join perpetual structure. Musicians tune up in the shady cove. When Mary Lew and David saw this group of trees for the first time, they knew at once that it was the perfect spot for a picnic table. A nearby shed harbors the tools that are in their hands every spare minute. A decomposed granite pathway separates the cove from sunnier gardens. To frame the property with evergreen and deciduous trees and shrubs, they frame textures and colors with wildlife attraction all year. Perennials join self-seeding annuals. Moving around the bed, they change perspective with the first berm they built.
That garden evolved because there's no water back there.
And the land back there was just flat. Don't like just flat land.
A dry stream deflects crazy rain, but mainly it simply adds to the charm. They got help with the largest boulders, but mostly they hauled them all themselves. The family calls it Grandpa's garden. But they didn't stop there.
We were just going to have one berm back there. And we said, well, you're not supposed to have, just this one thing back here. Let's do 3, have 3 berms. We did it one rock at a time, one plant at a time. We had no plan.
Yeah.
It was like playing. Let's pretend, like when you're a kid, let's pretend, let's do this way. And then the other one will go, yeah, well, what if we do this? And we just kind of knock ideas off of each other and basically around maybe one plant. What if we, you buy this plant, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah, and we buy plants and don't know what to do with them after we get them home.
That was all mowed. It would take hours and hours to mow it. This is so silly.
Along with habitat and food for wildlife, they make sure there's water too. Their plants don't need much, but the creatures do.
People ask, what do you do about pest control? You don't need any pest control. If you have water, you have the birds. The birds take care of everything.
I came out here one night we have a bird bath back there in the back, and there was a screech owl in there taking a bath at nighttime. We got a picture of him too. He was so cute. He just kind of turned around and looked at me, and he went back taking his bath.
Your wasp and bees and spiders and everything now have a purpose, so we don't try to kill anything except fire ants.
Yes, fire ants.
Their newest project in spare time is a pond and waterfall, as much for the wildlife as for them.
We've extended the patio so that a lot of that soil, rather than have them carry it off, we just had them stack it back there.
Oh, we'll make a waterfall.
A lot of the inspiration we get from we're in the house looking out at the windows, and we go, you know, that seemed like the perfect spot to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So, because we'll enjoy it when we're in the house too.
And certainly, it's all a wonderland for kids.
My grandchildren love it here. They just, as soon as they just want to come outside all the time. They just love playing out here. My grandson has a little electric car, and he just drives all over the roads. They're so cute. And I think my little granddaughter's going to be a gardener. She just loves it. She loves raking. She just loves working in the garden.
When they get a little older, we're going to put them to work.
In front, they changed the formerly dull dimension with multiple hardscapes, destinations, and plants formal and casual. They didn't banish all the lawn, but they did exchange buffalo grass with water-wise Palisades zoysia.
Originally, we had buffalo out there, but when they put the grass in, there was some little sprigs of Bermuda in the dirt. And I mentioned that to them, and they didn't seem to mind, but the Bermuda just kind of overtook the buffalo.
In an alcove, they didn't swamp it with shrubs when they replaced the grass. Instead, they made it a cozy viewpoint.
When we first moved here, we had grass from the house to the street. And we built beds all around that area to get rid of the grass. And we just thought it looked prettier. It's just boring just to have, you know, grass from the house to the street.
Yeah, we just have those little islands of grass.
You have to have the grass to let your eye rest. If it's too wild, you get tired.
Antique horse hitches that they rescued in Temple mark the entrance from the sidewalk to the front door. David and Mary Lew have always gardened, but she took the step to become a Bell County Master Gardener with encouragement from colleagues at Scott and White Hospital.
It's wonderful to be around people that are just so excited about nature and plants.
Are Mary Lew and David finished? Oh, probably not.
It's just like a painting. You just want to keep making it pretty.
Thanks to our friends in Temple for sharing their garden with us. Right now we're going to be talking about wildflower planting and habitat planting, if you will, for migrating species and for water conservation. I'm joined by Bill Neiman from Native American Seed. It's great to have you back on Central Texas Gardener.
It is a very good pleasure to be back. Thank you, Tom.
Well, Native American Seed is one of the primary purveyors of so many different native plant seeds here in Central Texas, not just in Central Texas, but actually probably in the nation right now.
Well, the southern plains for sure, and actually some even to northern Mexico.
All right, so you are providing what I think is probably a pretty hot commodity right now.
Well, I guess every time they pour another yard of concrete, there are others that realize the value of what's being lost and the need to put it back like it was.
Right. Well, put it back like it was is critically important these days because these are species that are habituated or are used to the kind of drought experience that Texas is going through right now.
Yes, we haven't used the word yet, but I might as well get started. It's called prairie. And they're really, prairies evolved with drought. And it's a commingling of grass, fire, drought, and cloven-hooved animals that made the prairie work. And there are historic records that go back that show these droughts. In fact, the times that we're in now are actually more normal There's some research now coming to light that shows about the last 40 or 50 or 60 years was actually abnormally wet. So people like you and I, who grew up thinking that that was normal, are really being awakened to the reality that this is a prairie, and that prairies evolved with drought, and perhaps what we thought was normal was actually abnormal.
Right, right.
And that perhaps we are in a more normal climate as far as rainfall goes. It's pretty, there's a lot of history that says that long extended periods of drought have been here before.
All right, well, that's sobering to say the least, but you have an answer for that when you talk about prairie and prairie restoration, because you have been doing this work for decades now.
This is our 25th year.
And you've developed how many different kinds of seed mixes?
Well, we have 30 mixtures, some of them as many as 52 species that are specific to solve ecological problems.
Right.
And many of our mixtures we feel are actually ecosystem in a bag. When you saw the fires, for example, in 2011, we developed two scorched earth recovery mixes. One for an eastern one for
perfect for bass drop.
Bass drop in the southeast areas, and then west of 35, the scorched earth recovery mix. So. These are species that are wide range of conditions, from caliche to bottomland soils. They are short annual wildflowers that take advantage of any kind of disturbance on the soil that will rapidly recover and revegetate the land, and also a mixture of deep-rooted warm season perennials, annuals, perennials, warm season, and cool season. So this is the approach that I have found to be the most successful, and in particular with the subject at hand, with the butterflies. But not only just butterflies, but all of life. It is all about a holistic approach. And the understanding of the intermingling of the relationships of the plants to the animals and even to us, the humans.
Right. Well, you talk about the mixture of seeds and the deep rootedness of some of these. I think it's striking just to talk about like one species like Liatris, which is one of the premier fall wildflowers for the state of Texas, especially in the Balcones Escarpment area. They can have roots 20 feet deep.
That's correct. These are healing plants. They are survivor plants, and they are healing plants. I have a little quick story about Liatris that's unbelievable, but these plants will find their way. They're wind-borne seeds. They blow in the winds, but they find a disturbed, ruined piece of land, and that's where they want to root up in some of the harshest conditions sometimes. In fact, if it's a really rich, lush, moist soil area, they don't do very well at all. They will rot. But these are very long-lived, almost prehistoric-looking bulbs, if you ever dig one up. And in our farming operation, we have rows and rows and rows, but as the years go by, some of them actually die out. Maybe we care for them too much, or maybe they just burn out. And so, but this bulb becomes hollowed, and it's real fibrous on the inside. And mice will come and burrow and make a nest in there in the wintertime and bring seeds of native grasses into that nest.
Interesting.
To recall, that is how I'm talking about, where you look at the system as a holistic approach.
Oh, that's beautiful. And now, this is the time of year for a lot of folks here in Central Texas to be thinking about seeding. So again, you've got mixes for just about every different kind of situation: sun, shade, east of I-35, and deep clay soils, or in the caliche. All those different things are there. What do you recommend to people in terms of prepping their sites?
Well, the seeds have to touch the earth. And so you can't just cast them out there on top of a bunch of dried straw or leaves material, or if the soil is really heavily crusted over or compact, the seeds will just lay on top, and then the first wind or rain will just blow them away. So the soil crust needs to be made somewhat friable, and the seeds need to be able to touch that earth. And the rule of thumb is to plant the seed 2 times the diameter of the seed is how deep you would plant it.
Okay.
So you take like a lemon mint seed, that is the diameter of this 0.5 millimeter pencil lead.
Yeah, right.
And you put it 2 times that deep.
Okay. All right. So
in other words, on the surface, and then just press it down.
Okay, got you. Now, one of the reasons why we're talking today and encouraging people to take this approach is because these species, these habitats that you create are so beneficial to migratory species, including the butterflies. And they provide not just food, but cover and lots of other things, right?
Yes, yeah. Sometimes I get a little bit, I guess, where I want to say that if a person can only focus on a blooming flower and a butterfly landing on it, they're missing the point. That is a moment in time. But the butterfly is alive and the plant is alive, and both of them are changing, and their needs are various and great. So the butterfly needs a place to hide, to sleep, it needs food, it needs a place for nesting or to raise its young. And when the young hatch, they need a certain kind of protection and food. So this is where, if you can think in terms of rebuilding a habitat instead of planting a specific species, but instead build a colony or like a little pocket prairie that could provide a lot of needs for the various species.
All right. Well, I love that bigger picture that you're trying to get people to focus on, because it's the butterfly and the plants are interdependent in many different ways. And one of the cool things that I've noted in your products now is that you have these specific blends of things. Like there's Sustain the Migration Kit specifically for butterflies and for monarchs, and then you have a butterfly retreat mix. Now, how would those two be different?
Well, let's take the Sustain the Migration Kit, and it is a blend of 3 different individual milkweeds, and that is for the person that is just really focused on a monarch.
Gotcha.
And in fact, that little kit contains what is required to do a cold stratification. There's actually vermiculite and instructions, and some neoprene rubber gloves so that you can go through the whole motions and cold stratify those seeds.
Okay.
And now let's talk a brief second about that. For the fall planting, you could put these seeds out without going through all those motions and let the wintertime cold stratify them, and they would sprout next spring.
Okay.
The butterfly retreat is numerous species, perennials and annuals, that provide all of those various sustenance that I mentioned.
Okay, and things like the frostweed, gay feather, and all those other things.
Maximilian sunflower,
all these beautiful
liatris.
species.
Yes.
Well, it's just terrific work that you're doing, and I know that you have created a place out there where people can come and visit as well at Native American Seeds. You're located in Junction, Texas.
That's correct.
And people can also find you online, and your catalog, I have to say, is an amazing resource.
Well, thank you. We produce 2 of those per year. This is our 25th year, so our 50th production is underway right now on this catalog.
All right. Well, Bill, it's a real pleasure to be with you, and thank you for the work that you're doing for all of us.
Thank you for spreading the word.
And coming up next is our friend Daphne.
Hi, I'm Daphne Richards. Augie's taking a little time off to vacation with his Doxy cousins, but he'll be back soon. This week's question is about jalapenos turning red and whether that indicates a problem with the plant. Well, if you're growing jalapenos for the first time, or you've never lost track of harvesting them and let them go too long, you may not have noticed that a natural development of these fruit is the reddening when they actually ripen. Normally we harvest them green, which stops their development, because they're much more tender and tasty at this stage. But if left on the vine, they do indeed turn red and begin to dry out, the way any seed pod does. Because we're usually interested in eating the flesh of the pepper, we don't want it to dry out, so we harvest them green while the flesh is still nice and juicy. And if allowed to ripen, that valuable flesh begins to dry up and the flavor changes. You may see red flesh jalapenos sold in the market, but more often you won't. Most red jalapenos are dried, smoked, and given a completely new name, chipotle. Chipotle peppers are used in cooking to provide a unique smoky flavor and not the heat normally associated with jalapenos. So if your jalapenos are turning red before you can harvest them, that's just a sign that you need to eat more jalapenos or that you should experiment with creating some chipotles. Our plant this week is Lindheimer's muhly, Muhlenbergia lindheimeri. This gorgeous ornamental grass is native only in the Edwards Plateau region of central Texas, but it's become widely used in the nursery trade, and for good reason. The sharp, bluish-gray foliage and seed heads create a striking addition to any garden. These perennial ornamentals look especially at home in a xeriscape, planted with other low-water use plants like Blackfoot and Copper Canyon daisies. The plant itself only gets 2 to 3 feet tall and wide, but once it's in bloom, the flower spikes can extend to another 2 to 3 feet. Since they fill in quite nicely all the way to the ground, Lindheimer's muhly, also known as big muhly, creates a very nice screen when planted in a hedgerow. Big muhly is native to dry prairies and rocky outcrops, but it can tolerate a little extra moisture if rain falls high and your soil's a bit heavy. It easily thrives in the full, hot sun with very little water, so once established, you can virtually ignore this plant. The native species have lovely pale green inflorescences, which are called panicles in grasses. Improved varieties with pale yellow and even reddish panicles are also available. One of the most popular is Regal Mist, with deep pinkish red flower spikes that develop in the late summer and add color to the garden in early winter, when most plants are going dormant and their colors fading. This fine, uniquely colored foliage also adds textural interest to the garden in addition to color. Place big muhly in conspicuous areas of the garden, near walkways or in borders, and allow it to shine as a sculptural element all year long. Out in your garden, if you have a St. Augustine lawn, be on the lookout for brown patch, which can develop when nighttime temperatures begin to cool and relative humidity is high. It's also time to plant wildflower and other spring flowering plants from seed. Cosmos, larkspur, bluebonnets, Mexican blanket, and coneflowers should be planted in the fall. Be sure to regularly water them if rains don't arrive. We'd love to hear from you, so please visit us at klru.org/ctg with your questions and plants from your garden.
Thanks, Daphne. Now let's check in with Trisha Shirey.
A lot of gardeners ask me, should I plant this as a seed or should I start with a transplant? Well, seeds are definitely cheaper. You can always get a lot more seeds in a packet than, and it's about the same price usually as the price of one transplant. And there are a lot of varieties that are available online and in catalogs that you won't find just anywhere as a transplant. Some of my favorite cucumbers and some of my favorite peppers are just not available as transplants, so I need to start those with seeds. Now, something like mosh, I never see that as a transplant. I have to start that one from seed. Starting seeds indoors does give us a jump on the season. We can't really plant tomatoes direct seeded in February, which would be the time to plant them because it's too cold. So we have to start tomatoes as transplants to get them in the ground and ready to bloom in March. And broccoli and cauliflower and things like that, in fall when it's time to plant them, the soil is strictly too hot for those seeds to germinate. So we can put them in a shady location and get them started. Now, things like beans and radishes grow really quickly and their root hairs are very easily damaged by transplanting, so those are best direct seeded. The long tap roots of okra and sunflowers can be damaged by transplanting too, so it's usually best to start those directly in the ground. But it is difficult to get seeds to start in warm soil, so when it's time for the fall garden, the soil dries out and crusts really fast. So I'll start cucumbers or melons or squash for fall in a shady location outside so that they can be transplanted in the garden at the proper time. You can also plant both ways. Sometimes I plant lettuce by seed, but also transplants, because those transplants will provide me with an immediate crop while I'm waiting for the seeds to get going. You want to start your transplants in an area that's got really good light, but with good ventilation too. If you have poor ventilation, you can often have problems with diseases like damping off. It's a fungal disease of the seedlings. You also need to water very gently for your plants that are started indoors. I like to use a spray mister bottle so that I can give them a very, very light sprinkling of water and it doesn't form a crust on the soil. Chamomile tea instead of water can help with damping off disease if you do have that fungal disease. Now, whether you're growing your own or you're buying plants from a grower, it's important to harden off transplants before you put them in the garden. Things that have just come from inside or from a greenhouse are not going to be adapted to the wind and the sun outdoors, and they will really suffer. So I move mine out gradually, a little bit in the morning, and then increase that every day until they've been adjusted to being outside for a week or 10 days before they get directly moved into the garden. So a combination is really the answer. Some things from seeds, some things from transplants, and always look at the package for more instructions about that particular variety, because that's going to be a good source of information for you about how those plants are going to perform direct or as a transplant. For Backyard Basics, I'm Trisha Shirey. Thanks for watching.
Find out more at klru.org/CTG and check out our blog. Next week, fall into perennials with Hill Country Water Gardens and Nursery. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online and follow CTG's blog. Check out klru.org/CTG.
Support for Central Texas Gardener comes from GeoGrowers, offering custom soil blends for lawns, gardens, xeriscaping, and organic landscaping supplies. More information at geogrowers.net.